Hello everyone. We are very pleased to join you from Tokyo, Japan. Welcome to the World Bank Tokyo Development Learning Center, or TDLC, side event, Reinventing the Future of Cities Emerging from the COVID-19 Pandemic. My name is Victor Mulas, and I'm the team lead of the Tokyo Development Learning Center. Let me start by introducing today's program. We are very excited today about the sessions and speakers that we have put together for this program. We're going to first explore the future of cities along with new trends and ideas that are reshaping urban living with the Smart City Institute of Japan. We will then dig a little bit deeper into some of these ideas and concepts with real-world examples from the International Finance Corporation and the World Bank. I want to thank our impressive lineup of speakers that we have with us here today, and also to Smart City Expo World Congress in providing this platform to share our perspectives and experiences with you today. Without further ado, let's get started with our first session. Joining me here in TDLC studio is Tak Nagumo, who is the Executive Managing Director of Smart City Institute Japan. At the same time, he serves as the Senior Managing Executive Officer at Mitsubishi UFJ Research and Consulting. He's also a member of the Japanese government's Regulatory Reform Promotion Council, and he also holds professorships in Kyoto University, Tallinn Institute of Technology, and the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. Tak not only leads one of the premier think tanks in Japan, but he also serves as promoting digital government and smart city initiatives at the national and local level in Japan. Tak, it's a great pleasure to have you here today with us in the studio. So I wanted to have this session in a more casual way and having a dialogue with you, because obviously you have a sense of all the trends that are going on in Japan. You have a position where you can oversee what are the new ideas that are coming from the private sector, from the city governments, but also in general from the citizens themselves. And during this year, you've been putting a series of events and to share ideas with Japanese cities, but also with cities from abroad. So you have a good sense of all the new thoughts that are coming. And I wanted to discuss with you a little bit what is happening now after the pandemic, right? You know, we have this pandemic and we were forced to stay locked down at home, and we saw the worst part of cities, and also we saw what could be the best part of cities. And we've been locked in what Kuma Kengo calls the boxes, right? We're living in a box all the time. Right. And I love the sense how he puts it. And we live in a box, which is our house. Then we get into a metal box, which is a car or a train. And then we go to another box, which is the office. But we miss how to connect humans out of those boxes and how to connect with nature, right? And I think that's some of the concepts that people are kind of craving a little bit. This human connection, this human scale for the city, and this connection with nature and green spaces in a more sensitive way. But these are just things that we are hearing, and I wanted to hear from you. I mean, what are you seeing that are the thoughts of people into how cities should evolve? Where should we go now that we have the chance of reinventing cities after the pandemic?
Thank you very much for the great introduction, Victor, and I'm happy to be here with you. And what I feel in Japan is that we have been a little bit too much focused on the technology before, but the pandemic started to change the mindset of people on smart cities. It has been kind of trigger to refocus on what the human centrality mean, human-centric cities mean. Before the pandemic, we are fascinated about ideas about autonomous drivings, online medicines, and digital government and so forth. Those are all important aspects of the digital transformation of the society as a whole. But more importantly, we started to recognize, okay, we're not commuting to the office right now. We are stuck in the home. So with the technology, what kind of well-being do you want to achieve? So, we are scaling back to human scale right now. That's the most important part of the mindset, the Japanese people right now.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, because you're bringing exactly this core of the Japanese mindset and how you interact. I mean, Japan, the density of population is very high, right? But it's also very orderly, right? Cities work in a very orderly way. And I remember before the pandemic, commuting was like orderly, but it was tight, right? And everybody you talk in Tokyo say, yeah, it's great, the transport system we have, but they all suffer about commuting, right? And one of the things we saw living from, we didn't have that, but we miss other things, right? So how do you see that equilibrium evolving? Because there was a lot of talk about, people are not going to come back to the office, but then they're coming back to the office. Is there a way that we can find a more comfortable way of doing the urban dynamics that we have seen? What do you see are the thoughts on that? How do you see the cities evolving in that direction?
Right. Good question. So we had the opportunity to think back what our life had been, right? And as you mentioned, Japanese people are very orderly. So commuting as a rule has been so firmly embedded in the mind of the people. But once you stopped from commuting, we had a chance to think about, is that the right way of balancing life and work? And we started to change a little bit. We are forced to change a little bit. And then we have experienced that we can work from home once digital technology is available. So many people have experienced that, we can comfortably work from home. Yeah. So, we are now in the midst of rebalancing the commuting and the online, right? And today, after the emergency declaration has been lifted, we are a little bit swinging back to what has been before. Yeah. But, the balance should be somewhere in the middle, right? So when it's necessary, people want to see each other for social reasons, communication reasons. But for daily work, you can do it at home. Yeah. So it's something in the middle right now.
Yeah, fantastic. And I wanted to ask you about something else that I see in Japan happening in the cities. And I think it's a concept that is unique to Japan urbanization, which is Japan is a very urbanized country. But you mix the cities with nature and nature life within the city, and you bring in here. You have this concept of setojama also that happens into mixing the nature with the urban living in some way and bringing those parts into that. Kuma Kengo was talking also about how do you bring that into the architecture, right? But I see that happening, and now that we move into low carbon cities, reduction of emissions, how do you see that concept of green cities evolving in Japan? And what do you think can be used from the Japanese model for other cities in the world to adapt their cities?
That's a great question. I think it's happening in two ways. One is that the Tokyo centralization is a little bit elevated right now. So it's a little bit more dispersed. So decentralization is one way to have more green space near to where you live. So let's say living in the suburb areas, you recognize that green is somewhat near. Before that, you didn't even pay attention to it because you're committing to the center of Tokyo and committing back to home. And it's a repetition of that kind of lifestyle. But now you recognize that once you're living in a suburb, you can create more comfortable cities near your home. That's one of them. Second is that once the Tokyo is a little bit more decentralized, more space is available, you can create green spots everywhere. Yeah. So, in both ways, center of Tokyo and suburban areas, you have a more proximity to green. Yeah. So it's a more rebalanced posture of the cities for Japan. And that kind of style can be exported to other cities around.
No, that's very interesting because we were talking with Tokyo Corporation, which is one of the railway companies that owns some of the metro and railway lines within the Tokyo area. And one of the ways they were thinking about these lines is a connection of green livable spaces that will connect among themselves. And I think it's bringing exactly what you're saying. And now that we know commuting is going to be sometimes in the office, sometimes at home, how do you bring that nature and livability to those spaces, right?
Right, exactly. And that kind of a mindset is also enhanced through the concern about the global climate crisis as well. Yeah. So you can really feel the changes of the climate right now. Yeah. Heavy rain and flooding in the center of the city. And you have to have a sensor in the river and so forth for the safety measures. And living in the green is now new sentiment emerging in the mind of the Japanese people too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to change gears a little bit because we are seeing this trend, and I want to bring this trend with the previous one you mentioned at the beginning, which was technology. And so, we started saying the concept in Japanese cities used to be technology only focus, and now going back to the human scale. But my sense is at the end you need both of them, right? Because we need these new technologies to become green. For instance, how do we continue having the efficiency of urban living, but with the reducing emissions? We need new technologies for those things, and parts of them is transportation. For instance, how do we do cars with lower emissions? And we know Japanese are at the frontier of that. Japanese companies like Toyota are doing amazing things there. So how do you see that evolving? What are the trends you are seeing? And if you can take us a little bit to this concept of a smart city model that Toyota is doing to test these technologies in a city itself. They are creating this city called the Toyota Smart City just to test these technologies. What is your sense of how things are happening there for the audience to understand? What are the dynamics? How do they see this evolution happening from Japanese mindset and technology?
Good question. So basically, Japanese people love vehicles and trains. When we grew up, new cars always came up and as a lineup, and the people like to see what's a brand new car model. So that's a mindset of the Japanese people first. But important part is that going back to what I said again, technology is a means to the end. Yeah. So we recognize the distinction between means and end. So let's focus on what we want first, and then think about the technology. Yeah. That's the kind of the mindset right now. And when you think about the mobility in the city, we recognize that there's some tiers of mobilities. Yeah. Like in a center of the city, you want to have a walkable city, and then micro mobility setup surrounding like bicycle, which we're so familiar with. And then the light rail or cars to commute is a little bit apart. Yeah. So combination of the different mode of mobility is very important. Yeah. And of course, with the technology, we can have a more Mars or autonomous driving. When the population is aging and decreasing, that kind of technology is very useful. Yes. So combination is a key always.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I see that happening in Japan in a very effective way, right? So as you were saying, at different scale, and the neighborhoods are thought for that. You have a lot of TOD developments, transport-oriented development around stations and how you grow in that. That brings me into another question of something that I see happening in Japan is how do you have been sharing infrastructure, right? So once we have streets, we cannot change them. It's an infrastructure that it takes a lot of time to change. We can change other things, but streets is more difficult, right? And they are there, and we are seeing a lot of cities, especially with the pandemic, reinventing the way we use streets, right? And sharing its use and doing it multi-use, like using it for the weekends for the neighborhood to have a business or restaurants, how it works. In other cities, it's half of it is for the restaurants to be able to have terraces. Here in Japan, you haven't done so much of that. In some neighborhoods like Ginza, you do it and you close the streets for creating an urban, you vitalize the area on weekends. But in essence, you don't do so many of those things, but you have been doing since a long time ago the sharing of the narrow streets in the neighborhoods for the use of bicycles, walkability, and cars at the same time. And somehow it is because they are very narrow, but it works. It works, and you have in pure harmony the people walking, the mothers with the kids in the bicycle going to the doing all their tasks in this micromobility solution, and then you have the cars also going through that, and everything is done in harmony with a small streets. But it's a very smart way of sharing infrastructure and reuse it for different uses. How do you see that evolving, and how do you see that concept expanding or not in Japan?
It's a good question. So the sharing of the space has been rooted in our limited land scale and kind of cultural background. And once we started to see the pandemic situation, we recognized that social distancing becomes so important. So rather than being in the restaurant or bars inside, you have to really share the open space right now, right? So walkable street idea has been also emerging in Japan. Okay. And with the sharing of the private space and the public space, of course, it's a little narrower than the spaces in other countries, but I think it's been reactivated in a way that it's rooted in the Japanese culture. And if you see, big streets in Tokyo or smaller streets in suburban areas, Matsuyama, Takamatsu, Kobe, they started to reactivate sharing the space right now. Yeah. And that's the best way to also activate the community sensitivities. Yeah. People talk to each other, see each other. That's very important.
Yes, absolutely, and that's something that we've seen. It's like key in city life, right? At the end, we are craving for that social connection, which we suffer from not having it during the pandemic. Right, so I think it's coming back, and you are seeing these open spaces like popping up and being more activated. So I want to ask you a final question. You gave us a lot of information and thoughts, and really appreciate about that. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about going forward. What are the key challenges that you see for cities in Japan as we move forward with the pandemic? What are the 2 or 3 key challenges that the cities should be focusing on to try to tackle?
What's typical in Japan is the silo mentality amongst the both public and private organizations. Essentially, city is a place where everything is cutting across. Yeah. So collaboration is key. And not the superficial collaboration, it's an in-depth collaboration. Mm-hmm. So how can you change a mindset from vertical to horizontal is a key. And we have created a concept of the smart city architect, which is a total producer of the entire smart city design. Yeah. And that's one of the efforts to coordinate all the related disciplines and the entities. Yeah. And can we actually implement an idea is a key. Then and align with that idea, how can you integrate the climate change ideas and the digital technology ideas into one set is another challenge. And the third one is the civic engagement. Yes. Right, it's a big one because the citizens sometimes are receptive to the ideas proposed by someone else, like the city councils or corporations. But in a more matured world, people are the main character who desire what they want and propose the ideas for these smart cities going forward. How can we come up with more matured citizenship who desires the more ideal cities for the next generations and after next generation? That's the key challenge we're faced with. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think you have quite an agenda for the coming years. But thank you very much for sharing all these thoughts, ideas, and perspective from Japan. We really appreciate your time with us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Victor.
Thank you. Let's now move on to our next session. I would like to invite my colleague, Narai Choi. Narai is a senior urban development specialist and the lead for the Global Smart City Partnership Program at the World Bank. Narai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victor, and welcome everyone to the session where we present the World Bank Group approach to green, resilient, and inclusive smart city development. COVID-19 has shown that digital connectivity is critical to societal resilience and business continuity. Smart City Solutions for a Riskier World by ESI Thought Labs examined how more than 170 cities around the world are harnessing technology to drive resilience, sustainability, and citizen centricity, and what lessons can be learned during the pandemic. The survey shows that 65% of the cities surveyed, the pandemic brought home how crucial smart city programs are for their future. And almost 4 out of 10 cities surveyed realized the value of collaboration between the public and private sectors to address today's issues and challenges. During 2021 spring meetings, the Development Committee of the World Bank Group endorsed the World Bank Group's Green, Resilient, and Inclusive Development, or GREED, approach to achieving a more sustainable and equitable recovery from the pandemic. and also as a long-term development paradigm. GRID emphasizes that World Bank Group intervention needs to be implemented simultaneously in a well-coordinated manner, for which technology innovation in mobilizing the private sector are highlighted as cross-cutting enablers. That is, smart cities are well aligned with and contribute to the GRID approach of the World Bank Group. However, despite the plethora of smart city strategy documents, their implementation has been limited due to a number of bottlenecks. Where and how the World Bank Group can jointly address some of these bottlenecks and unlock the potential of smart cities is the main theme of today's presentation. A World Bank Group approach provides comprehensive support to help cities to identify, prioritize, and then implement solutions towards achieving sustainable urban development goals across multiple interrelated sectors and through various activities, notably convening or coordinating with partners and providing technical and financial support. The World Bank Group supports their smart city ambition across the full cycle of smart city development, from assessment, diagnostic, and planning through market enabling into both public and commercial investments. Assessment and planning. We engage in upstream assessment and planning by examining a smart city maturity level, conducting stakeholder mapping, and using a smart city model for visioning and planning in reference to benchmark international good practices. Market enabling. Both the World Bank and IFC support efforts to enable the market. The World Bank supports improvement of the enabling environment, such as regulations, institutional and human capacity development, etc., through its technical assistance, either standalone or as part of its lending operations. The IFC conducts market analysis and invests in digital infrastructure as the foundation to enable smart city solutions. Investments. The World Bank invests in public sector solutions as part of its lending operations, while the IFC makes commercial investments that support smart city solutions. We will now introduce some concrete examples of how the World Bank Group has engaged with smart city development across this cycle. Now I will hand it over to my colleague, Jessica.
Thank you, Naret. I will now introduce two cases on how the World Bank has supported client needs through smart solutions and toward building sustainable cities. The first example is an operational support for Digital Central Asia, South Asia regional program and Russia. The World Bank have been working with clients in Russia and Central Asia to advance in the smart city agenda, particularly to explore the potential of data and technology to improve services, quality of life, and mitigate the impact of COVID-19 in client cities. The bank has developed a strong collaboration in Central Asia on the development of a smart city strategy, pilots, and project components, and in Russia, a joint digital development and urban team work on a smart city assessment to inform the next generation of smart city programs and projects. On our Central Asia engagement, the bank organized a regional smart city knowledge sharing roadshow under Digital Central Asia, South Asia program that took place early last year in 4 countries: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, where Korean experts presented smart city best practices. The objective of this initiative were 1, to build the capacity of the client governments to better plan smart city through the adoption of best practices, and 2, to assess their readiness and barriers to a smart city development and propose recommendations both at the policy and technical level. As a result, in addition to very useful capacity building and awareness raising that was provided across the 4 target countries, a tangible long-term outcome of this regional roadshow was also observed in the case of Uzbekistan, where it was approved the implementation of a digital program that considered the development of a single geoportal integrated system with over 40 informational systems, the creation of systems for management of transport and utilities infrastructure and digitalization of social sector. At the city of Dushanbe in Tajikistan, the bank developed a readiness assessment methodology to analyze favorable environment and obstacle to the city and the obstacle that the city faces on the path to develop a smart city and implementation of digital technologies. It also proposes recommendations both at the policy and the technical level. Lastly, the work in Russia aimed to analyzing the digital transformation of Russian cities. The study included an assessment of the current level of readiness of cities to implementation of the latest approaches and technologies to ensure digital resilience to modern challenge, including COVID-19. A second example is the Bangladesh local government COVID-19 response and recovery project. In response to COVID-19 crisis, the World Bank team worked with urban local governments in Bangladesh to prepare a COVID response and recovery project. The team started by asking local governments about their needs and how technology can be used to improve local government effectiveness, not only at the short term, but also in the long term. Given the COVID situation, the team started an online web-based survey covering all municipalities and 12 city corporations. The survey revealed common needs as well as different challenges. More than half of the 18 municipalities that answered the survey do not have any online system to support remote working during COVID. And close to half of these municipalities have no online portal to connect with citizens. The survey also revealed their needs on ICT hardware and software, skills for remote working, as well as support in improving regulations for remote working and moving from paper to online records to better serve citizens. Based on the feedback from the survey, digital infrastructure improvement has become a critical aspect of the project. Local governments can use part of the grants transferred through the projects toward meeting urgent hardware, software, and training needs. The project also provides systematic help through technical assistance. This is a good case where the World Bank support identified the remote working and ICT needs in the COVID context and led to a project design whereby digital investment are integral parts. Now, Jonky will introduce some concrete examples on IFC engagement.
Thank you very much, Jessica. I brought a couple of examples from the IFC side where we have supported our clients on their smart city journey. Our first example is a smart city market enabling investment committed by IFC. So digital infrastructure is the foundation that enables many smart city solutions. Yet many countries in the developing world lack this fundamental infrastructure, especially in Africa, where 3/4 of the population still remain offline. But the technology is expensive. Just 1 kilometer of installed cable can cost between $15,000 and $30,000. And Africa needs at least 500,000 more kilometers to connect the continent. Since governments can't undertake a project of this scale alone, private investors, such as C-Squared, have come to meet the demand. What's special about C-Squared is that this company offers cost-effective solutions by deploying wholesale, carrier-neutral, open-access fiber optic networks, linking end users to mobile network operators and internet service providers. The company was founded in 2013, and it has laid 3,000 kilometers of fiber and connected more than 40 MNOs and ISPs in multiple metro areas in Ghana, Liberia, and Uganda. In 2017, IFC, alongside Google, Convergence Partners, and Mitsui, committed an investment of up to $100 million to support the company in making internet connection available in underserved areas in Africa. The second example is a municipal finance to the city of Zaporizhia in Ukraine. Now, Zaporizhia is one of the most important industrial cities in Ukraine that's located in southeastern part of the country, with a population of more than 700,000 people. And the city has a vision. It wants to be a smart city with a network of digitally connected devices that communicate data. And they want to run e-buses as well and have modern road maintenance machinery. Now, this is because Zaporizhzhia is grappling with aging infrastructure dating as far as back as the Soviet era. Ukraine's municipal services have been suffering from years of underinvestment, and cities face significant gaps in terms of providing reliable public services. And they're in urgent need of funding, but the government alone cannot address these massive investment challenges. That is why a robust private sector is essential to spur investment and to strengthen the local infrastructure. So in this context, IFC's Cities program in Ukraine has provided financial and advisory support to the nation's growing cities. In Zaporizhzhia in particular, IFC and GSCP program worked early on with the city council to put together a smart city strategy. And that included solutions like data analysis and smart technologies such as the LoRaWAN network that is designed to wirelessly connect battery-operated objects to the internet that would allow real-time monitoring of water pipe pressures, air quality, and operate emergency alert systems as well. Smart traffic management was another component that would connect the city's traffic intersections to be controlled remotely in a centralized location. It would also collect data on traffic flow through sensors, and that would enable adaptive management to address congestion in the most challenging areas in the city and help to plan policies for safer pedestrian traffic as well. With that, I think we can conclude today's session. I would say World Bank Group continues to work with cities in developing countries to implement their smart city ambitions. And we hope that today's presentation has inspired you on your smart city journey. Thank you very much. And I will now turn it back to Victor.
Thank you, Narai, Jongi, and Jessica for sharing your insights. I trust that our audience have found this to be very interesting and valuable. I really enjoy it. Now with this, we are concluding this side event. And just before you go, a reminder that the Tokyo Development Learning Center organizes many other events on smart cities and related urban topics. So please check out our website and follow us in Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn if you are interested. Thank you again for joining us today. Goodbye.